Hey guys, welcome to Open Spaces. And if you haven't joined us in the past, Open Spaces is a community of people who are processing our experiences together, leaving spiritually toxic environments. So today I've got my friend Paige Weber coming on. And Paige, why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself real quick?
I'm Paige Weber. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a licensed counselor in Missouri, and I have been kind of working with toxic environments for some time now. I worked in psychiatric hospitals before I got into therapy individually, being a therapist. And we want to just take time to kind of talk about how do we understand trauma and how do we understand these kind of big events that are happening as they unravel, and then also just some practical applications for working through different types of trauma and hard experiences coming out of these experiences.
Yeah, because it's not like the single event itself or leaving itself, but then just even in the last year, as more of these like abuse exposures are coming out every week. These are people we know, like they're our friends, and
Yeah.
you know, when you're in one charismatic ministry, you're usually attached to 5 or 7 more these believers we know, and so every time one of these news stories hits or a report comes out, um, it's like I'm bearing witness. I want to like spread awareness, but at the same time, I can feel it bringing all of my stuff up. That some stuff that I thought I've dealt with, but like I guess not fully.
Yeah. So neural networks work a lot like a strand of Christmas lights. You plug one in and it lights up the whole strand. And that's how memory works. So when we have a traumatic experience when we're 4 or 5 years old, and then, we're older in life and we have an experience that mirrors that in a traumatic way, it lights up all the times across our life that we've had those experiences. And so for some people that grew up in churches or around multiple toxic environments through family, through their school systems, through work environments, it all lights up together. And so that's why working with trauma is so complicated, is because it does oftentimes have a long history that comes with it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we were talking about that I really liked and wanted to kind of like bring um, here, so that we could kind of bring it to the rest of the community, is like thinking through. So these situations are ongoing. You can't always, you can remove yourself and shut yourself off, but you can't always. And how do we kind of like manage ourselves and manage our experience of that? Because I know that as I've been reading about what's happening, and even like with IHOP KC, where we're both from, when the reports come out or a new story comes out, there have been moments where I've just felt like completely overwhelmed and completely stuck.
Right. And so those two extremes of some people get really overwhelmed and then other people shut down. And so that spectrum is very large. And so giving people space to kind of be where they are in the moment and know that that's okay. And so one thing I really like in kind of creating like a self-awareness plan, or some people call it like a safety plan, but I really like self awareness better, is thinking of your life kind of like a stoplight. So we all have green activities when we know everything is going well, right? All of the meals for the week are made, everything that I need to get done is done, everything's on the calendar, the bills are paid, I'm up to date. And then it also looks like little things, like for some people, it might be when I'm in the green zone, I make my bed every day, or I do the dishes every day, or I get up on time. And everyone's green list is a little different. But it's the things that you know when everything is going well. This is my green zone. And then we have the yellow zone, And we're going to actually skip that for a second and go to the red zone. So the red zone is when we're in a dangerous place. So we're doing destructive things or we're doing harmful things that are a lot of times either scary or feel very unsafe or feel very disconnecting. So think suicidal ideation, think excessive use of alcohol or drugs. It can be a desire or cutting, those kind of activities. But it can also be stuff like disassociating, checking out, numbing out, endlessly scrolling or watching TV, isolating. Those are some examples of that red zone. And I say examples because for every person, the red zone is different.
Right.
Um, every person has those go to behaviors that I call them their defaults. So they're the things that when things get really, really tough in life, this is what we're going to. So then when we think about the yellow zone is that bridge, right, from red to green. And so we don't get there overnight.
Mm.
And that is the zone we need to pay the most attention to. So, what are the things that start to slide that tell us we're going from the green into the red? Maybe we hit snooze a few times.
Right.
Maybe we just leave the dishes till the morning. Like maybe we don't bother getting up and doing our hair. We just start wearing a hat every day.
Yeah.
Different for everybody, right? Like it is the things that are custom to you that you know are bridging over from red or from green to red.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not a hard plan to write out on your own, but is a really practical thing to gain self-awareness around what are the things that I need to be. And for some people, they may do this exercise and say, I'm always in the yellow. And right now, for people coming out of IHOP, that wouldn't be uncommon to be in the yellow more often than in the green.
Yeah.
And so looking at like what are the green behaviors I could start doing to like at least let myself start to edge up, so that if something does happen that feels big trigger comes down the way, I have space.
Okay. So I like how you're framing this because you're kind of framing this as creating um, capacity or creating emotional space ahead of time. So like I'm self-assessing this week and just to see if I'm understanding. But if I'm self-assessing this week and I'm going, okay, I've been sick, my kids are sick, so I'm not planning dinners, whatever. This is like my life, which is going to be different from everybody else's. But you know, and I know that there are some big things coming down the line because some of these things we have known in advance. What can I do now to kind of what are the things that have helped me get from yellow or like orange? I'm adding a color at this
Yeah,
point. Like I
it's
think
real.
um, maybe I'm an orange. How do I at least get to yellow so I have more like runway before I get to red?
Mm-hmm.
Am I like am I doing good? Am I baby stepping?
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, and this is a hard thing for people, especially if they've come out of like childhood trauma, of how do I assess what I need and how do I ask someone else to help me with it?
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
How can I own my own needs and how can I either meet them or can I ask for help?
That's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, food is one of those things we can't avoid, right? We have to eat. And so that's a good one of like, do I have a friend, a partner, or someone that I can lean into to help when I'm feeling sick or when something else is going on,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, to kind of help? Or have I created freezer meals that are just in there for when I know a crisis is going to occur?
And I love that because a lot of this, in my own life, I've kids with chronic illness, and I've dealt with some chronic illness that's less long term. But those are it's almost the same kind of thing where you're having to actually like assess where your body, mind, emotions are at because those are really affected by illness as well. It's really practical.
Yeah. So there's kind of three key things in that. And one in the safety plan that I always like to think about is there's three answers to a solution. There's time, there's energy, and there's money. Right? And usually one of those three is going to answer my problem.
Money would answer so many for me. No,
Right. And so do I have them? And which
right.
ones do I have and which
Yeah.
ones do I not? And so sometimes we're like, well, I don't have any of them. And that's real.
Yeah.
Um, but what do I have the most of?
Yeah. And then work from there.
Yeah. So another element in that, and that's what you were already hitting on, is the three doors to look at for self-awareness, which is what every therapist would start with, is the mind, the body, and the emotions, right? Those are the three doorways into working with trauma and or working with difficult experiences. So if a person is in their mind, it might look like I have perseverating or ongoing thoughts that I can't get rid of, or intrusive thoughts might be a way people word it.
Yeah.
Or I have, I'm catastrophizing everything. Yeah. No wins.
No experience with that. Never
Right.
in my life.
Or I can't. One sign that I see a lot, especially like through these kind of things, is like I suddenly can't sleep. Like I
Yeah.
lay down in bed and my mind races,
Yeah.
um, and that says I don't have time in the day to slow down and allow my mind to wander and drift. And because I'm either disassociating or I don't have that time, then our body thinks that bed is the time to do that.
Oh, that's a really good insight.
Yeah, we could do
Yeah.
a whole thing on sleep, but we'll do that another day. Um, but it's important to give yourself time in the day to wander and think, because it actually helps with sleep.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's kind of the mind entry point. And so the next entry point is the body. And people oftentimes think the least of that one. They don't register like how they're feeling in their body. But for those people that do, their body doesn't stop. So you'll often notice those people are the ones who like they're shaking their leg, or they're just moving all the time. They can't stop moving because all that energy, the intensity, the anxiety is stored in their body, and they can't like get rid of it. Or they fidget, they can't sit down.
Yeah.
And those things mirror ADHD. So I want to like point that out, that it's not like 100% I'm in a trauma response if I am neurodiverse and I have something else going on.
Yeah. The body one is really interesting to me because I don't think I recognized the way my body was responding for a lot of years.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I think back, especially when having had such distance from all this, right? Because I've had years and years of distance from IHOP and then a shorter span of years from the church, right? As I've been reading reports or something, or a couple times, someone's had a memory and then, or we've like played old footage and I'll hear some of the music again. And all of a sudden I recognized that while I was at IHOP, I had this sensation in my body, almost like prickling all, under my skin, like my nerves were just on fire all the time. And I had no idea what it was and did not recognize that that was actually probably a trauma response. I was having, I think at the time, suicidal ideation. Of course, I thought it was like demonic. I thought I was being attacked by demons. So then I'm being given all these prayers, spend more time in the prayer room. And now I recognize that, as weird as it is, some of it was just set off. Like I was ending up in this unstable place because of just complete sensory overwhelm after having mono, and really not like, it was literally, some of it was just body stuff, not all of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it wasn't until recently that I started to put those things together and go, oh my God, because I would feel the feeling again. And I was like, oh, now I'm far past enough to know, oh, okay, I need to pay attention to that. My body's telling me something. And so I do wonder if that's something other people are maybe experiencing in this too, like kind of I don't know, return to some of those sort of weird ways it kind of manifests in our body.
And that's a great example. So what could happen potentially, not saying this your experience, is that you could become sick today and suddenly have that same sensation because your body is correlating it. Your body's connecting what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's true for like a guitar player who like way overplayed and their shoulder hurt. And then now they might go and get a job and like they hurt their shoulder and they can't figure out why they're in such a bad mood and they're mad. They're mad about it. And it feels disconnected. But the body always holds the trauma for us. It is the carrier of the trauma. People think it's in the mind, but it's in the body.
That's wild.
And so all of those experiences, those body sensations are real. And I'm so sorry that you were gaslit into not understanding how much your body wanted to get out of that environment. I'm so sorry that was your experience. And I mean that it makes me so sad that we over spiritualize things that are your body's way of screaming and saying that not living feels safer than being in this place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's so sad. Because that's what your body is trying to do, is to care for you and say, this is such a scary place that I would rather do something extreme than be here.
One of the things that's been, and I know we're kind of jumping again into, this is half sharing and half kind of sharing, but one of the things in the last year when we've been kind of processing together that has been so healing was accepting, and I think I've touched on this before in open spaces, but this idea that caring for my body and paying attention to it was love and caring for myself. And it was like this, instead of this like shaming, like, I can't handle this, it was like transformed into this almost like self-nurturing kind of, thing.
Yeah. Well, and that's what it's meant to do. So trauma takes away a few things. It takes away our voice, right? Our ability to have a need or a want because someone else's need or want is greater. Human trauma, I should say. And then it also takes away our kind of physical autonomy to feel like we're allowed to go and do something else or fight back in some way. And when you're embedded in a culture of that, or it's esteemed to deny your body, to not eat for days, to hurt and be okay that you're in pain because you're suffering for Jesus, so it's better. And we're missing out on what I believe, even in the Christian world, should be seen as, if you truly believe in God and you believe you're God's creation, why would you not take care of that?
Yeah.
And, if you've moved past that and you have self-energy and self-love, then you absolutely will want to take care of that. You will want to nurture and come back from. And I want to say this even in both of those, and then we're going to come back to emotion. Whenever there's human trauma, it requires humans to heal. Human trauma requires humans to heal. Even in our conversations with you, things you've said have healed places in my heart. And that's what's been beautiful about getting to know you over the last year, is that we've mutually allowed each other to heal together. And that's the beauty of open spaces and other groups like this, is that we can get together and we can heal together.
Yeah.
We can be honest and we can say, that's not okay. That's not right. That was abuse.
Yeah, there is something about hearing it from someone who was there. And I know that's not always available, but at least someone who deeply understood. There's stuff that I've talked about with a therapist, or I've talked about with someone who is safe and outside of the experience, right?
Yeah.
And And, that it was helpful. It was helpful to process. But then when I've actually had a safe person who I could tell that experience to, and they just got it.
Yeah.
And then we're able to say, hey, that was wrong. Everything you just said, but then speak to who I am, or speak to, how I should have been cared for. It has been like, a year's worth of working towards something, trying to work through something. And then like in 15 minutes, I'm not saying it's perfect, but there's it's like closure.
Yeah.
Actually experiencing closure.
Yeah. And so I think that is perfect. I think what you said is exactly right. If you have friends that have also come out of that community that are safe, and we could have a whole conversation about how to find a safe person, because we don't want to just assume that because they came out of that environment that they've done their own work, right? We've already seen that from people at a larger scale, of people that have come out and said, oh, this is bad and wrong, but they're not actually healthy
Yeah.
in their approaches. And so the last area I want to touch on is emotion. And then within emotion, it looks like my emotions are so big. I'm screaming, I'm yelling, I'm seeing red. It can be I'm so anxious that I'm having behavior because I'm so emotional that I'm not even being rational anymore. I've lost my mind. And I don't mean that in a mental health way, I've lost my mind, but like in the sense of like I can't think
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify. And then for all three of those, mind, body, and emotion, whichever one you're in, if one is dominating and isolating, we always want to move into another corridor. We always want to move into another door, so to speak. So if you're in the bottom two, the body and the emotions, you typically need your mind to help you stabilize.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in your mind thinking a lot, then you need your body and your emotions to stabilize.
Is that kind of how it typically pairs off? Like mind, and then you're kind of disassociated from your emotions and body?
Yes.
Or for me, I think too, if I'm in my mind, I will have an emotion, and it's anxiety. But all the other ones are gone.
Yeah.
And
Because
I don't,
anxiety is one of those that bridges the mind and the emotion.
yeah,
Sometimes can be in the body, because anxiety isn't usually the core. It is a buffer to I have so many emotions that anxiety or depression come in as an umbrella and
yeah,
says, how about we just tolerate this one thing, and then we don't have to feel all the feels. We can just feel anxiety, or we can just feel depressed.
that's such a really helpful insight, because that, I don't think I've ever articulated that, but that really has been my experience of it when I am having sort of like these cycling thoughts, where I'm just in this like endless spiral, or fixating or whatever. I'll know that I'm anxious, but it isn't until I actually get, sometimes I'll go on like a walk, and I'll talk to a friend while I'm walking, so that I'm like, that has really helped before. And then I'll go through and realize, you know what, as I'm kind of talking through it, instead of circling through it, like, oh, I had this crazy experience that I hadn't really remembered, that is setting off all these thoughts.
Yeah.
And when I start to actually tap into the emotions that I was going through, and that is bringing up that I haven't been feeling, and frankly just cry it out, I'm back to an even keel space, like
Right.
relatively quickly.
Yeah. So you've actually described multiple coping skills there.
Oh,
So walking, being outside in nature actually is really good for the nervous system, for the vagus nerve. Walking creates bilateral stimulation, which is good to create balance within the system, and vibration, which is a whole nother topic in the vagus nerve. That's why I'm pointing. And then talking with someone, creating emotional connection, because we talk slower than we think, right?
Yeah.
I'm 5 steps ahead of you in my brain as we talk, but I have to slow down enough to articulate it.
So that's a really good insight too, is just that if you're in that mind space,
Mm-hmm.
actually talking to someone, it helps you get into that emotion space for multiple reasons. And one of them is just that you have to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
The other is then obviously like if you're talking to a safe person you have an emotional connection with, yeah, you can.
Yeah. And slowing down is a key part of, lowering that stress response. So there's lots of ways to slow down. Talking is one of them, but breath work is another.
Mm-hmm.
So the beauty of breath is it's the only part of the whole nervous system that we have any control over, right? We can't control our heart or blood pressure or any of those things, but our breath we have control over.
Mm.
And so if you think about, I'll be nerdy for a moment. If you
Love
think
it.
about the diaphragm, right? It's like a balloon. And so
Mm-hmm.
when we take a breath in, what is it doing? It's pushing on the heart. So the heart has to beat faster. When we exhale, it goes flat. And the heart has more space so it can slow down.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime we breathe in half the space that we breathe out, we're going to lower our blood pressure. We're going to lower our body's speed. Yeah.
Okay. This explains it. It's it's interesting because when I was at IHOP, my coping skill, I had one, and it was just singing.
Yeah.
And you know I'm not going to take away from people's experiences of that as a spiritual practice,
Mm-hmm.
but just on a really practical level, even now for me, that still works because
Yeah.
you are in the. I mean, it's a form of breath work. You literally are controlling your breath,
Yeah.
and it also slows you down in the sense that you're. It's almost I mean, singing can be like a form of meditation.
So singing is unique in that. So the vagus nerve actually sits right back here on the neck, right?
Yeah.
And it connects to the vocal cords. So it sits right there. So if you can imagine the vagus nerve's here, the vocal cords are here. And when we sing, we vibrate the
Uh-huh.
vocal cords, which shakes the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is in control of fight, flight, and freeze. All stress responses come through the vagus nerve. So when we vibrate it, it's almost like rocking a baby. It calms down the stress response.
Mm.
So breath does that, singing does that, and then humming also does that. Sighing does that. So we see that a lot with if you got scared and you
Yeah.
go, that's us regulating our vagus nerve. We're calming
Okay.
it down. Yeah, our body
Yeah.
has to have a somatic release to the experience because we hold our breath when we're scared, when we're in a trauma response. The vagus nerve tightens up, and when we sigh, the vagus nerve lets go.
This is fascinating. I'm all
Yeah,
here for that. Drag you back here to have more conversations about this.
yeah. So that's
Okay,
kind of just like a little nerd moment of like kind of understanding the neuroanatomy behind trauma just a little bit.
I love it.
It's really a snip of all of the bigger picture, but it's helpful to understand. And then understanding like how your senses are impacted by trauma is the other piece. How they're impacted is one piece, and then the other thing is how do I use my senses to calm down my body,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the visual cortex is always the first for trauma. All trauma goes through the visual cortex because we're always scanning the earth to stay alive, right?
Okay.
So we're always looking for what is going to hurt us. And our eyes make the decision way before our brain does. It's so much faster. It shoots into our eyes, runs to the back of the brain, down the spine, and back up again. And then the mind comes online and decides if the threat is real.
Okay.
So it's super fast. So, in the same way, you can use your eyes to calm down things by creating visualization exercises. mindfulness exercises. I love the Daily Calm on YouTube because it's free. And there's an endless number of mindful activities on there. There's another one called the Dare app. It's just Dare. That's free, and I like it because it has a panic button, and you hit the panic button, it literally will tell you a guided step by step what to do.
Ooh, I like.
Um, and it has ones for anxiety. It has different buttons on there that are all really simple. And it's a free plan for the basics. And then if you want a lot more, obviously you can pay for more stuff. Yeah.
More bells and whistles.
Yeah. There's another one called Soul Care that's a Christian version of that. So for people who want that, but it is paid. Otherwise, I think there's like two on there
Okay.
you get for free.
Yeah,
So those are some good like digital resources for people.
that is super helpful.
So that's kind of sight. So if we think of sound, there's so many options out there for sound to help. Guided meditation is one of them. Again, guided meditation gets us into our mind. So if we need to get into our mind, it's a good way to do it. Breath work oftentimes gets us into our body a little bit easier. And you can use music to help with a calming strategy. There's all kinds of different ear methods out there that you can listen to online to kind of help auditory slowing down. And then the opposite is true. So sometimes people need sensory deprivation to process. So they
Yeah.
need noise canceling or they need silence.
Yeah.
And so when someone is really overwhelmed, oftentimes I'll say, go sit in the dark, noise canceling headphones, get a weighted blanket, and take out as many senses as you can and give yourself 5 or 10 minutes. And sometimes that really helps people take down that intensity. For taste, you can use really spicy things, or you can use really sweet things or sour things. You want to put it on your tongue, obviously, and you want to really be in your body because it's a body exercise.
Wow.
It's very grounding because you can't not taste sour. You can't not taste spice.
Yeah, I have a really good friend who was in a car accident. And afterwards, she started suffering like panic attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And she had like chronic illness and stuff. And so there was she explained it. And, but her nervous system was much more prone to getting disoriented kind of.
Sure.
And taking longer to come back. And she had these little sour tablets. It's from a brand called Jubilance, and they had like vitamin C and something else in them. I can't remember. They're fantastic, actually. But she would, when she was having the panic attacks, she would pop one into her mouth, and it was. So I was having panic attacks for a while and tried it as well, and I was like, this is actually really helpful. Because I had panic attacks for the same reason, which is why we're talking about it. I was in a car accident a year and a half, and so for like a month, my body would just freak out, and it was from the visual. It was if I was starting to drive again, or if I walked out into sunlight and suddenly the visuals just changed really quickly, I would have a panic attack come on. And so yeah, I love that one, but I had never put two and two together that was why it worked.
Yeah.
I was like, sure, okay, great.
Like it worked. Yeah.
Yep.
The same thing could be true for ice. You can hold ice, and it can do a grounding exercise, or splashing really, really cold water on your face. Infrared saunas for some people, like that intense heat, can be really calming and relaxing. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And so it's those things that like make you kind of get in your body in a grounding and intentional way that I can't not notice what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so touch is another one that can be tricky for certain types of survivors, especially if there's any kind of SA or other things involved. But one great touch, which is one of my favorites, is animals. And so animals can be a lovely way to reground yourself. Your whole body's like warming. I can see it.
I'm thinking about when this first happened. We had gotten cats, and so when all of the news was first coming out about I have Casey, and it just felt like every day was a new
Story.
grief. Yeah, I mean, it was just a new story and fresh grief. I was often sitting on the couch in the morning after the kids are school, and the cat would come over, and he would lay on my chest and purr, and it was so like even still when I think about it, um and I'm not a huge animal person, because they're a lot and they smell kind of bad, but my cat, I mean, it was just this really incredibly grounding experience that helped me through a lot of moments where I was like kind of stuck or frozen in feeling depressed or anxious or just stuck with grief.
Yeah, animals are so lovely. And then um, what I love, because for me, that is my dog Fudgy. And he's like a little 16-pound poodle, so he like can fit like a baby on me. And I can borrow his calm.
Yeah.
So I can feel his calm and I can borrow it and I can loan into that. And so you can do that with an animal. If you have a safe human, you can do that with them, whether it's a partner or someone you trust. Um, you can borrow calm from someone else. You can borrow their peace. You can borrow their love.
Yeah.
If you don't have the capacity to have your own, borrow it. Yeah,
It's like a library. No, I'm just kidding.
it is. Well,
But
because there's this cool thing in our brains called mirror neurons, where we're made to mirror other people. And so that's why if I get really excited, you get excited, we mirror each other. And so I can actually mirror, you can borrow calm because your neurons in your brain will actually pick up on the calm when you take time to notice, and your brain and your body will mirror it.
I think that's why there's some people, they walk into a room and you just feel so much more chill. Thinking about like certain like my my son's sixth grade teacher. She walks in the room and everybody's like,
Yeah.
Mrs. Casey is magical.
So she's learned the value of loaning out her nervous system.
Yeah.
And that's what a good therapist does. So if you're with a good therapist, they can help your nervous system calm down by the use of mirror neurons. Um, that is part of their role,
Yeah.
is to really mirror and be in that place with you.
Feels like that's something that goes back to parent child relationships.
100%.
Because, you know, I mean, we pretty much are like co-regulating our kids' little nervous systems.
Yeah. And it's okay. Like I even say to my kids, like, can you borrow my calm right now?
Yeah.
Or can you feel mama's love? And can you take it to school with you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that.
absolutely. Yeah, that's it. And so then you're kind of getting into attachment, which is a whole other animal.
Let's just do all of it right
We'll
now.
just keep talking about the bunny trails that we're not going to talk about.
Uh,
Um, but then also, like, I think we kind of covered all the senses, right? Did I miss any? Sight, sound, taste, touch.
we did hear, yeah. So it
Hearing.
sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk about real quick too is when do I know if I need to get, huh?
I said smell, I guess.
Oh,
No,
we didn't talk about smell. Oh,
no.
so a smell, the olfactory sense actually is a really, it also stores a lot of memory for people. And so you can find smells, like you can use, I hate this, but you can use essential oils. Uh,
Everyone immediate. We needed a trigger warning before you said that, I think.
or you
I'm
can
gonna,
use
hold on. I'm gonna regulate.
candles. Um, and you can use those to find the things that actually create calm in your body.
Yeah.
or create memories of love, or create positive experiences. So, for example, my grandma loved Werther butterscotches. So I have all these memories of crawling up on her lap and knowing that there's a table next to her that I could reach over and get a butterscotch. And so there's something in that, the smell, the taste, that makes me feel so deeply loved and safe, you
Wow.
know. And we all have those things that have that connection for us. And so it's finding those things.
And you even said creating those things. That just piqued my interest, is because when I was processing through like some really hard traumatic experiences with a therapist, that were like medical, and I was having a ton of trouble regulating after. And she was trying to find those things for me, but so many things had triggers at the time, and we were in the middle of COVID, so I couldn't really go anywhere. And she was like, "All right, I want you to find a time this week where you are feeling settled and calm. And when you start finding those times and places, what I want you to do is put your hand on your chest and taking that feeling as comfort." And or she was like, or do it on your face, and taking the warmth as comfort, because she had figured out that warmth worked for me.
Yeah.
Because I cozying up in a blanket, whatever, but she was trying to help me then take that and turn it into an association, so that then I could use it later when
Yeah.
I'm having these like really disorienting moments. And it worked. Like, it worked really well. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't buy it. And she was like, can you trust me for like just 2 weeks? Can we give this a shot? And I just remember thinking it was so dumb, but she was like, just, we've built enough, And I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And literally to this day, I ended up teaching it to my kids. Because it works. You can
Yeah.
create new safe memories for yourself, and
Yeah.
that for me was like the topic of trauma and the topic of processing these experiences. Even when you're talking about it right now, my brain immediately goes off, and I'm like, crap, there's so much to do. How am I gonna, it feels so overwhelming. And then when I recognize these little steps where I'm like, actually, there is something tangible I can do, and it's actually really small, and I can create a sense of safety for myself. That was kind of freeing. It made me feel like less of a writer. Like, I felt like I was like a passenger in my
Yeah.
experience, and
Yeah.
more a driver in where I'm gonna go next, if that tracks.
Yes, that's it. You are hitting the nail on the head of I would never tell someone who came out of trauma to find a safe place. Like, go find your safe place. Like, no, I can create a space that feels safe in a moment.
Yeah.
And that is realistic for someone. But the world isn't safe for someone who had complex trauma or childhood abuse or came from a toxic environment for a really long time. The body then begins to believe that everyone and everything is unsafe. And when we
Yeah.
talk about betrayal trauma, which would be the experience for anyone associated with IHOP, in betrayal trauma, then we have to see everyone as untrustworthy because we
Mm-hmm.
no longer know who's telling the truth. Um, and then that's the biggest trauma I think that came out of that whole culture is I no longer know who to trust
Yeah.
and who's going to be on my side with my story and my experience. Um, and so it's how do I create any sense of safety? And so I will tell people like, can you find safety in your pinky? And they will usually laugh at me. And I will say, just try. Can you find some sense of safety in your pinky? And they will say yes. And I will say, you have found safety in your body.
Yeah. And that, I think, so I'm thinking back, and I remember, I want to say it was maybe 7 years post IHOP. Um, I had little kids. I had little kids who were sick. We were navigating medical trauma. And I had this moment where I was like, how do I know who's safe? Like, that was my very literal experience. And I was absolutely panicking because I realized I no longer felt safe with anybody, not with doctors, not with teachers, not with just anyone.
Yeah.
And I had no idea where to go. We had just had a second church trauma after the first. And all of a sudden I had this moment where I realized that I could be safe for myself. I could at least learn how to be.
Yes.
And I knew I could be safe for myself, like right now, like, because I was like, I know what I need,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of like, I need a quiet moment. I need to build something, like, and so I could trust myself. I figured if I could work from that spot, I
Yeah.
could figure out a path forward just one step at a time. And like, thinking back, I don't know that I had no idea that's what I was doing, but that was the first step, I think, for me, in actually beginning to heal from
Yeah.
something else. Like, it was a really pivotal moment for me where it
Yeah,
was,
absolutely. Because anytime we can find what I call self energy, which is that sense of self, that there's something in me that believes has some hope, right? Has
yeah,
any sense of hope at all that things could be different. Um, it is its own healer. Like it will, the body is made to self heal, and that works physically as well as emotionally, mentally. So when we find self energy, that is the best internal therapist we will ever have because it will help us navigate and heal the whole system, the whole body. Um, we already have the answers. We just have to, you know, use the guy who holds the keys, so to speak, or the gal.
I love that. I think that is actually also, um, kind of a pretty good ending point. I feel like
Yeah, went full circle.
yeah, it really did. And I don't know if there's anything you want to add, just anybody listening, or anything you want to say to kind of wrap it up. But I will just say, um, that I'm really thankful that you took this time. And I'm really thankful that you're my friend and that you have all this wisdom
Me
and that you
too.
understand, and that you also just have this, the way you're able to put together all of these concepts so easily and then actually apply it to what we all went through just feels like such a gift.
Thank you. The same is true. I've enjoyed getting to know you, and you are a gift. I'm so grateful for all the ways you're advocating. Um, I think I want to end saying signs that you need a therapist is when your life is reaching a point that things feel unmanageable.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the point where you need to find help. And I recommend finding a licensed therapist or a licensed psychologist to work with. Psychologytoday.com is a great resource. And Google's a great resource too, to just use to look up, see if friends know people, and find someone and vet them. And don't be afraid to do an interview and ask and make sure that it feels like a good fit for you.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I just want to say if you're hearing this and something has happened that you've sparked a lot of big emotions, go 911, call 911, or go to your local emergency room. Don't try to fend it off at home if you're feeling suicidal and you're considering moves that could be harmful to yourself or to others. You can always go to the emergency room. You can always call 911.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And know that there are people that have been in this environment with you, that have walked with you, and they care about you. And that's why we wanted to make this series. Is that you know you're not alone, and you know that there are people that care.
Yeah.
You matter.
Thanks so much, Paige, for coming on here and talking with us, and kind of just expanding tool set a little bit and our understanding a little bit. This has been awesome. And I hope we get to do a couple more episodes with you, drag you back on here.
So I just want to take a moment and brag on Susan and talk about her online community called Open Spaces, which is this collaborative group of people who have come through other toxic environments. And they oftentimes have live streams where they come together and they allow people to kind of share openly. They'll have people come on and talk on various topics and share. It's become a beautiful healing community. It's one of those areas that we talked about of creating connection and community with other like-minded people that are going through the same thing. You have the option to just sit and listen if that's you, or jump on and talk to others. It's a beautiful community that you have built, Susan, with others. And I love what you've done to kind of open up a space, an open space for others to join in and share together and heal together.
Thanks so much. And if you guys ever want to join us, most of our streams are on Friday nights. I think our next one is at 7:30, but you can always check on Open Spaces Community on Facebook for like more up-to-date information on when we're going to meet next.
And we can put the link in the comments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks so much.